direction, sets the stage to turn the page. At the raising of the curtain, I am hurting and uncertain of the parts we have played. Why must the show go on? I can't say these lines again. Why must the show go on? Must I sing this song again? Fading out of the close-up, everybody's reeling, no concealing. Your beauty is seed stealing. Violins are singing, sunsets waiting, radiating. Your entrance is breathtaking. Why must the show go on? I can't say these lines again. Why must the show go on? Must I sing this song again?
Hello, everybody. My name is Drew Quinones. Welcome to the Four Wall Sunday Roundtable, episode 45, which also marks our year anniversary from when Jeff, Al, and I started doing this show. It's been a great run, and we're happy to keep going as long as we can. We have a lot to get through today, so I'm going to bring Jeff in. Jeff.
Hey,
happy 1 year anniversary.
Happy 1 year anniversary. It's so crazy that in a year that I barely worked at my chosen profession, so much has happened looking back. Right. The whole thing. It's been a lot. I'm sure you can say the same.
Right, definitely.
I wanted to say something about the virtual vendor showcase. I know when is it? It starts on Tuesday. Is that correct?
It starts tomorrow. But cool. The live portion, there's 2 live days. That's going to be Wednesday, Thursday. So you can start watching all the content. There is timers that you can see when all the manufacturer videos will be presented, and they're all new. So new products are going to be launched on there. So it should be fun.
Yeah. I'm not a Four Wall employee. I'm sort of Four Wall adjacent. So I can say thank you to Four Wall for this virtual vendor showcase, especially last year. The timing last year was perfect, as so many of us were kind of like shocked and confused about what was going on and didn't know what was happening and what to do or what was going on next. So under other circumstances, I may not have watched something like this, but in looking for any connection, I did tune in and I really enjoyed it. And this year, it's kind of like a bookend to it. We'll all be back soon, but aren't quite yet. So maybe it's the perfect time to check in and see what the manufacturers are up to. And have been up to, and because they've been working hard all year making new products. And before long, we'll all be very busy, and hopefully very soon, I'll be using their new stuff. So
yeah. And I mean, last year's the videos that were kind of sent in, it was somewhat kind of depressing. Do you know what I mean? So this is a little more optimistic, and people aren't filming their videos in their basement or something. It's actually, they're back in the shops and stuff. So it should be good. And we have some funny cameos that we did just for fun. So it's going to be full of fun, laughs, and you can learn something about some new products.
More celebratory.
Yeah.
Well, welcome back.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of the virtual vendor showcase, before we get to our panel, we have two special guests from what one might call a virtual student showcase. It's actually called Design Week. Part of what we do here on this Sunday Roundtable is to pull back the curtain on professions within the design industry. So I'm happy to do that with something that's actually called Design Week. And we're here to, we'd like to welcome Chris Barreca and Katie Danner to talk about Design Week and what it is.
Hey, Jeff. Hey, Drew.
Hello. Thank you for joining us.
So let's dive right in. What is Design Week and how is the current incarnation conceived?
So Design Week is a showcase for all of the graduating students from around the country, from as many of the schools as we could put together, which is a pretty comprehensive group. It was conceived because for years we've been kind of doing this by bringing together, let's say, the students to run across town in New York from NDPR, let's say, to run to design meeting and see Yale's and NYU's and CalArts students and vice versa. And we would work with Narelle at CMU to run over to their event, but the dates were very difficult to line up. So we could very rarely get all of the different events scheduled at the same time. COVID has allowed for us to do that. And so what's really great is actually, there's sort of great things that happened both last year and now they're happening this year even more intensely, is we're able to get everybody together and everybody work together to do that. So, Claudia Stephens over at, Design Showcase East, got all of her member schools together and said, hey, let's do this. And Tom Mardike's NDPR with me, and Steve Strawbridge at Yale, Susan Hilferty and ML at NYU, and Narelle, as I said, at CMU. And we got it together and we put it together into a group, which is really great. And there's a lot of schools in Design Showcase East and NDPR. I'm not going to list them now. But there's a lot of events during the week. So Oscar Eustace is going to give a beginning, a kind of kickoff talk. CMU is hosting something. NYU is hosting things for the students. And we also have for years worked with Wingspace. And Wingspace really wants to kind of eventually be a host for this in general, but they're doing a salon closing things out. And I'm going to turn it over to Katie Danner. Katie is the person that made us all believe it could happen, because none of us had any of the technical skills. And Katie did this amazing thing last year. And so we all went, yay, get Katie to do this. And she's been amazing. And so I'm going to turn it over to her to tell you how it works. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chris. So this year, Design Week, it's going to be on our website, ndpr-nyc.com. And I think they're going to put that in the comments section on the stream. And so NDPR, Design Showcase East, Yale, NYU, and Carnegie Mellon will all have links on that site to their each individual events. NDPR, Design Showcase East, and Yale will all function the same. They all have their mini portfolios with the students' contact information, bio, a link to their website, and then you can click to schedule an appointment with each presenter. And so then after you schedule an appointment, you'll get a Zoom link, a Google Calendar reminder, and that all starts tomorrow until Saturday. So you can go ahead and start making appointments. It's open right now. Carnegie Mellon, they're having their portfolios up and that you can view each student's portfolio. And then they're also having, like Chris said, the Launchpad networking series for professionals to come on. And NYU, they're going to have their portfolios up, and you can leave notes on each of the students' portfolios and projects for them to review.
Great. Cool. Can we speak to students directly as we would have if we were in person? How does that work this year?
Yeah, so that's the NDPR, Design Showcase East and Yale. You can schedule an appointment and it would be a Zoom conversation. Each presenter has their own calendar, so you can pick the availability, schedule a time, and you'll get that Zoom generated link. And you'll also be able to speak to students at the Launchpad series that Carnegie Mellon is doing.
What's great, Jeff, is it's really, really easy in the sense that once somebody schedules a meeting, that time goes away. So when you go into schedule with a student, you're only seeing the available slots, and you can just line it up with your own availability.
And last year, NDPR, when we worked on it, we had over 500 appointments, and we had those from all over the world, as opposed to just, who's in New York at that specific time. So it was great how many people were able to attend and have one-on-one conversations with the presenter. So
yes, so people from all over the world that might be zooming in on this, please join us. That would be great during the week. And yes, we're going to hope that this continues post-COVID. We, how it will go post-COVID, we're all trying to figure out later, but it's definitely going to continue. It'll definitely continue.
I think we were about to ask that very question. So so one form or another, it will go on. I have to say, it is very convenient. There's nothing quite like meeting someone in person and sitting down and looking at their portfolio. And I will say, selfishly, as a professional, it's always nice to go to these things because I get to see peers of mine too. It's nice to meet all the students, but it's also nice to run into other professionals. So
I'm sure there'll be a mix. I think that what will happen next year, what we've all been talking about a bit, is there'll be both in person, but we'll probably use this format as well, because it is difficult for a lot of professionals to make it to the specific times in the city that people are in person.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Chris and Katie. We really appreciate you coming on and telling us about it. I did put the link in the comment section, so anybody wants to click on that, it is in there. So thank you again, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Alrighty.
Let's get right to our panel. Right as we bring them in, I'm going to say very quickly something I've said many times. Once again, we have, I haven't said this many times. We have some of the top educators in the country, design educators in the country here. This is what I've said many times, that their job has been harder than almost anyone else who's been, because of COVID, because they had to reinvent their entire approach to how they teach and what they do. So let's let them talk about it. Let's bring them in.
All right, our first guest is Narelle Sissons from CMU. Hello, Narelle.
Hi, how are you?
Doing good. Thank you for joining us. Next is no problem. Next is Claudia Stephens from SMU. Hello, Claudia.
Hello.
Next from Yale University is Stephen Strawbridge.
Hello.
Hello. And last but not least, Victor N. Tan from UMKC. Hey, Victor.
Hi.
All right.
Hi,
well, let's get started.
Thank you all so much. So, Stephen, let's start with you. Before we talk about your work in education, can you please tell us what inspired you to become a designer in the first place? Where did it start for you?
It was, I had discovered the stage crew in high school because I was cutting gym. And so I had a little bit of an introduction to lighting, but what really inspired me was at my undergraduate school, there was a theater department run by a man named Paul Berman. And we were just doing some really great stuff at Kievich and Pinter and Ionesco, all this non-naturalistic kind of theater that really just opened my eyes and made me just want to do that. So that was pretty much, I have to give it a lot of credit to him.
Yeah, amazing. Narelle, how about you? Where did it start for you?
Yeah, well, I think it started when I was pretty young. When I was a 5-year-old, 6-year-old kid, we used to go to see pantomimes in London. And I used to always sit there kind of eagerly awaiting the curtain to open. And once it had opened, I was always imagining what it would be like to be in that world. And so for me, I wanted to be part of that world. I never wanted to be an actor or anybody who actually needed to perform on stage, but I wanted just to kind of be part of that world and create worlds for production. So I guess it started there, and then it just grew. Practiced, saw lots of productions, and as I grew up, and then did some work in high school, and then then inevitably it kind of took hold.
Cool. Claudia, how about you?
Well, I learned to sew from my grandmother. I used to go down to visit my grandmother. We made my clothes for high school. So when I got to college and they asked who could sew in the theater and dance department, and I raised my hand and never looked back, really. I learned that costuming was a career. I hadn't known it before, and I had been involved in theater and dance as I was growing up, but I just didn't really get it. So I fell into it. I think a lot of people fall into it, and I stayed inspired by it in terms of design, because I discovered I can actually see in my head what I want, and now I have this opportunity to put it out there. So that was kept me inspired.
Amazing. And Victor?
Hi, well, I have a very unusual way of getting into theater. Obviously, like a lot of other people, I was involved in high school, theater. But in the summer of my junior and senior year at Columbia, I had an opportunity to work for the New York Shakespeare Festival on the mobile theater. And it was the hardest work I ever did. We set up, did the show, and struck pretty much every day. And at the end of that summer, they came around and asked, anybody who wants to stay on and work, they can guarantee work to the end of the year. Every other college student went back to school. I stayed. And that decision changed my life, because
And the rest is history.
I'm still in theater.
What were you studying at Columbia at the time?
I was an East Asian Studies major.
Oh, wow.
History.
Cool.
If I didn't say yes, I probably would be teaching history somewhere.
Wow.
In some ways, you are teaching history if you do history class. You're still involved.
Claudia, we're going to go back to you for this one. How and when did you begin working in education, and was teaching something you always thought you would do?
I never planned to teach. I graduated from Carnegie Mellon, and I taught for 3 years because I needed to stay in the area, but I finally quit and went to New York and put my career into New York. But then, again, I don't think I'm original with this. I married and had a family, began to have a family, and pushing a stroller on the subway, I mean, it's not fun, guys. So I was looking for another way to continue my career, and so the opportunity at SMU came up, and I'm from Texas, and so I began teaching here. And with the airport here, an international airport, I could fly around the country easily and continue my career while teaching at SMU. And what kept me at SMU was the opportunity to sort of reinvigorate the MFA program there, and the fact that scholarship meant I had to keep designing across the country. So that was my journey into education.
Great. And Stephen, how about you?
Right. No, I didn't ever plan to go into teaching. I was working in Houston, and Jennifer Tippin was working across the street at the opera, and she came over to sit in a tech of mine, and she said, my predecessor at Yale, Bill Warfel, was retiring, and she said, well, you should apply for this job. So I did, and I got the job somehow. So that's how it went.
Amazing.
And go ahead.
You were Jennifer's student, I guess that might be important to say too, right?
I was, yes. I was the graduate of the program. I had been
It wasn't just random.
Yeah, 10 years. So, yeah, exactly.
And Victor, how about you?
Well, as a college dropout, I have never expected to teach. But just like Claudia, after working for about almost 2 decades, I was married, had a child at that point, my oldest daughter. I have 3 daughters, but at that time I only had 1. And I was out of town 30 plus weeks a year. And that was just not viable for a family. So all of a sudden, Michigan called. and said, would I be interested in teaching? They had to have a immediate replacement for their lighting professor. And I said yes. So I went, they did a quick search, and I got offered the job. And I've been teaching now for close to 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did they just randomly call you, or did you have any sort of relationship?
I did. Laura Crow was teaching costumes there. And I guess they wanted to hire a professional lighting designer. Mm-hmm. So I was one of the people on the list.
Amazing. And Narelle, how about you?
Wow. Well, it's a long story, actually similar to everybody's here, that I didn't actually start out thinking I was going to teach. But I had been working, I was working in New York City and kind of, rattling around all the usual theaters there. And I knew Joanne Acolytus through, various different, avenues. And we talked about maybe working together one day, and then out of the blue, about 10 years later, phone rang and Joanne said, do you want to come and teach up at Bard College? So that's where I started. I was doing the visual imagination for the modern stage course, and absolutely loved it. I remember I was terrified on the first day because I didn't, never really been in a room full of people who were going to sit and actually, look and listen. I remember thinking, why are they all looking at me? That was a response. But it was amazing. And then from there, Carnegie Mellon hired me, and I've been CMU now for about 15 years.
Wow, incredible. 15 years. How long have you all been teaching now? Claudia, how long have you been doing it?
I've been teaching 24 years.
And Stephen?
1993. You had to ask. Okay.
Wow. Victor, I think you said, but say it again. How long have you been teaching?
It's 30 years. I started teaching in 1994.
Amazing. What a panel. I'm so glad you're all here.
Yeah, definitely.
Great group. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the past year. We've said this before on the show a few times, but I'm going to say it again and again. Over the last year, we've done several episodes focusing on theater design education during the pandemic, and we have previously spoken about the abrupt ending to the last school year and the expectations as the year began. We've now, kind of unbelievably, reached the end of another school year. When the shutdown began, it was a shock and a disruption for everyone, particularly amplified for educators, as I said before, who had to immediately reinvent how they taught. Going into this school year, with some time to adjust and plan, what was your school and your program's approach, and how did it go? Victor, let's start with you. How did it go this year?
Okay, well, the theater is part of the conservatory, so when we shut down a year ago, March, all our production froze, including, opera. However, at the end of that semester, we have music students who needed recitals. And so we evidently researched, and we found what we felt was the safest way to give them what they want, which is their recital, in a 700-seat recital hall. And we got it to live stream their performances, and we cleaned the stage. We use air exchange, HEPA filter, and we just clean the air for at least like half an hour before the performance. And we got through it safely. And so the following fall, dance needed to do their recital. So we did the same thing with very, very limited on-stage participation. We had no audience, and we put on the performances, and it worked. We were able to do it safely. We follow every single safety protocol, and including cleaning the air between each dance. We spent 15 minutes doing that. And we have people mopping the stage. So for the recital, it happened. We had 3 dance concerts, and it went very well and very safely. We had no COVID outbreak. In fact, we told the dancers, if anybody tested positive, it will be canceled.
Yeah.
And it was absolute. It was like, that was it. And at the end of the year, nobody came down with it. We did as safe as we could. Because of that, we were able to do 1 live production, and it was also done with very limited participation. It was monologues or 2 actors. I think one case there were 3 actors, but they all lived together, so they could all safely work together without any problem. And we had the same kind of strict rules from the time we start tech. All the rehearsal was done on Zoom. When we start tech on stage, only the people involved with it. There'll be a lighting designer, a projections designer, set designer, and costume designer were all involved. And only they and the people that work on it can be there. And we did the whole thing over 2 weeks. A different show was 10 30-minute productions.
So were you teaching lighting in person? Like, were your lighting classes?
Lighting class was all on Zoom. It was the performance, but that was the only on stage production. The other productions were all virtual.
Got it. Narelle, how about you? Were you in person or virtual at CMU?
When we first went into the pivot at, this time, well, I guess March last year, we were all remote. So that was really hard because we had sets on stage, we had people ready to tech, we had some groups who had just started tech and were about to finish and open. So everything was moved to a virtual production. And so the answer to that really at that time was whatever the group decided to do. So we spent lots of time as advisors talking to the students about how they'd like to complete their projects. And we a lot of it was just done in-house. Then throughout the summer, we talked a lot about, as a faculty and staff about, how we wanted to tackle production, because we were finding for the most part that classes online were okay, although clearly, in some departments, it was going to be much better to have people in person. So so we had these 2 topics, which was, class and production. We decided that we would hold on production for the fall and use the second part of the fall to actually start, the students starting together, thinking about how they'd like to make their piece. CMU had pretty strict protocols, which was good in terms of, no guests in the building and how many people could be in a room, and they did air testing. And actually, when you walk through our building now, there's arrows and plastic and lines and all sorts of things that are sort of peppered all through the building, trying to help people think about traffic flow. So, but in terms of production, we went into a kind of hybrid mode. So the productions that actually happened in the fall were hybrid. Some ended up, filming in person in the building. We used a lot of green screen technology. We had this amazing kind of lartsy of moving props and green screens to people's homes and dropping things off. And, it's a very complicated method of, working. But, in the end, most of the productions did happen in the spring, and they were, this hybrid version that was actually put onto, we had our own version of like a YouTube channel.
So it sounds like you were able to replace at least the collaborative spirit of what production is supposed to be with something else.
Yeah. And the design process, our design students could go through and things could be budgeted, and, they decided which things would be built and which weren't. So yes, it actually did do quite a bit of work. Obviously, we were all sad that, we had to be remote. But in terms of classes, we actually had some students, needed to be in the building. So the students in the classes that didn't yielded to the ones that needed to be in there. So, you know, I had a class, a design class, and we didn't go into the building, but it meant then that there was, you know, the numbers were right for the actors and some of the other design areas. So, you know, it was a real mix of just management. It's real management, you know, Nazi going on.
Sure. Stephen, how did it work at Yale?
Well, we did something maybe a little unusual. What we did was the whole school, not just the design department, went to a 4-year system. So we added a year to the program, which is optional, and students in different departments are taking that option at different rates. So in the design department, basically the whole year was theoretical, and what we'll do, this is especially true for lighting, and next year we'll be concentrating on the practical work. So there was no production work this past year, and we hope, and it looks like we're going to be able to have a lot of production work, not maybe where it was before we left, but we will be able to do a lot more productions next year, especially in the light lab. We've just been dying to get back into the light lab. Lighting is very hard to teach in a classroom. You just have to climb up and down a ladder and point some lights, and
you sort of have to do it.
Yeah, and so it's been hard. I mean, it's worked better. Well, it's worked okay. I think it works better for some of the other design disciplines because, I mean, there are advantages to Zoom. You can see sketches very clearly. I mean, models become two-dimensional. It's interesting that in the set area, things have moved back towards proscenium and pictorial theater this year. And I think it's because we're looking at them on the screen.
Sure.
But so that's our plan. What the way it worked is that all the money that would have gone into productions supports the students in their 4th year, so that they don't have to pay for it.
It's pretty great, actually. Yeah. That's a great solution. And so your lighting classes were all over Zoom as well.
Yes, and we're done with it, I have to tell you.
I'm done if I never hear the word Zoom again. Claudia, how about you and SMU?
Well, much of what everyone has said, we did as well. I won't repeat much of that. I will say a couple of things. We did not have a lot of production. We had some. But as a result, we used some of those production dollars, and we're in Dallas, Texas. So we brought in guest artists. We had Ruth Carter from LA, people from New York, my connections in New York. And they were not just talking heads, they were additional seminars and curriculum that our students were required to participate. So in a way, we did a little bit what Stephen was talking about. We sort of emphasized the classroom and the theoretical, and we brought in practicing professionals to share things like sync on set, and union, specific union officers we brought in to talk about the union guidelines of getting into the union. So we pushed heavily on content that we might miss because of the production schedule. That was kind of how we filled it out. Our students did have actual productions, so that was good. They did have some collaboration, but when you talk about collaboration, our collaboration was across campus in terms of getting the university to understand how we were managing our own selves safely, just fine, thank you very much. And we would follow all of their protocols and then some, because we have union industry standards to follow.
Sure.
And so we held, our classrooms were in person the whole time, not in the spring, but back in the fall, and this fall, in the academic year, we were in person, but on Zoom at the same time. So
the students were on campus, but you were doing Zoom.
Yes, well, we had limitations as, how many people in a classroom and things like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, how did it go in terms, Victor talked about this for a moment about no one getting sick. Did you have to shut anything down because anyone got COVID or?
Not in theater. No, not in theater.
That's good.
Across campus, yes, but not in theater.
Not in theater. And Narelle and Stephen, did you have any issues we
had, no, we didn't have an outbreak, but we did have some situations where, through a friend of a friend may have known, been in contact with somebody. So, we did have a couple of the productions did go into quarantine for a short period and then resumed. But, they stuck with the CMU COVID guidelines. So mostly we were pretty safe.
Got it. Yeah.
Claudia, I'm going to stick with you. Were there virtual replacements to production, for example, with lighting, offline editors or previs? Is there anything like that for set and costume designers?
Well, we're working so much digitally anyway that the theoretical work in the classroom continued for all three of our design areas. So that just continued. Am I answering the question you're asking?
Yeah.
I think so.
So we really just continued working digitally, and we did it in person as well as online, and students could just choose to stay home if they felt compromised or felt anxious. So, yeah.
Okay. And Stephen, how about you at Yale? You kind of mentioned it in your previous answer slightly.
I'm sorry, I lost the question. What is the question?
To teach lighting, did you use any of the previous software? Did you use virtual, lighting, or was it really all theoretical?
The students begin to do it on their own. We don't actually teach it, but they and what was interesting is that there's a collaboration class with all the design disciplines together, and the lighting designers use the previs to help the set designers and the other designers see what the production how it might work, especially the time-based aspects of it.
Sure.
And Narelle?
Sorry, what was the question again?
Well, lighting designers have like previs and offline programs. Is there anything like that for set designers that you can do to create I guess you can just create the picture. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, they were frantically learning SketchUp and all those the CAD 3D modeling programs and so on. It's interesting because actually we decided to really lean into that this year, and a couple of alumni, students, old students of ours who live and work in LA, who just are fabulous. Came and worked with our students on some film and TV design. So because we were working on that type of content, suddenly working on different types of drafting for film and television, doing the 3D modeling for storyboarding and so on, actually became I think it's probably a course we're going to keep. It became a really essential part of what we're doing, and it came right at the point in the student's career that I think made a lot of sense in that final semester. So yes, I think that leaning into some of those softwares is probably, I think it may change the industry somewhat in scenery, because you can do so much now, and I think that as time goes by, there's been so much development going into these programs that I'm starting to wonder whether, because they're almost tactile, some of them, whether you can actually manipulate them in real time with whoever you're working with. So, we're all working, around the world, across the country, we're in the profession. It's very rare that you're in person with the, group of collaborators. So suddenly, we're getting used to using this tool. So that's kind of how we talked about it, and hopefully people will, become more used to it. But, there's nothing like the actual physical model box. So I have to say, I do love that. And I think as a teaching tool, it's really essential.
Even as a lighting designer, getting an actual model, which you don't get that often anymore, is so much better than a SketchUp. So.
Cool. Well, Victor, is there anything you want to add to any sort of?
Yes.
Yeah.
We did 4 virtual productions, and we were sort of fortuitous that we have several projection designers who are working professionally who were able to help, because they were able to use media technology to put background. And so they helped the scenic designer and the lighting designer come up with design for our 4 virtual productions. And also help costume designers, because they were able to do, the simple thing like, what is it, in Snapchat and all that, where you could put things on people's head
Yeah,
right?
yeah, like
You could,
yeah,
you
I
could
don't even
put
know what they call it.
you could design it and you could put it on people. So you could put, wigs, you could put hair stuff, you could put all those things on while with two of the productions were live and two of the productions were taped, but presented as live. I think several educational institutions have done the same thing that we did. So there was better control over what it looks like.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we were fortuitous that we have several projections designers who were able to advise us and really help our students develop the skills. And I'm telling you, a lot of our students graduating want to now have a design, a projections portfolio.
Sure.
Lighting, scenic, they want it. They got to really see what can be done during this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So Victor, and I guess, and this is to anyone else, but Victor, first, who did virtual performances, are you going to continue with that? I mean, once we're back next year or the year after, when we're doing real production again, do you think virtual will continue?
I think it will continue somewhat because we are planning to live stream our productions at least for the next couple of years. We're not gonna, we developed the technology. The conservatory wants to live stream all their recitals. So we're part of that process. So we have plans for that. We're planning to do that. I think when we go back to doing live productions, we're gonna do a lot more projections than we have ever done.
Okay.
Because everybody got to see what digital media can be. And so I think going to the future, we're going to do more shows with the idea that there'll be live stream.
Does anyone else want to follow up on that? Does anyone else think you'll be doing this a little more as far as virtual production?
I don't know about virtual production, but the thing that we learned that was a great advantage was we could have guest artists from anywhere that didn't have to get on a train and come speak to the students. It was that we will continue. It really opened up so many doors for great people to come and meet the students.
Yeah, we had that same experience, and I think that even one of the classes that I was teaching, we based it upon having guests, as I'd mentioned earlier, and I think that all of my colleagues, we spent a lot of time, cultivating those guest relationships, and also what I thought was really, really nice was having alumni come and talk to us, people who perhaps we hadn't seen for, they've been out for maybe, 5 years, and the connection that they could have with the current students was phenomenal. So I think that, there's a whole networking opportunity as well as a learning opportunity in guest, visits on screen.
Claudia, did you want to add anything to that?
Well, I just agree with that we're able to bring in graduate students from 5 years ago who are working professionally, and that means so much to the young people in the program. And in regards to whether we're going to live stream and that sort of thing or not, I would just say, talk to me after June 14th. I think we have a meeting coming up about that.
Okay.
Our undergraduate program is very acting based, and so getting those kids live and on stage is important. But I think being able to pivot immediately to live stream is critical. So I think that conversation will be continuing.
Well, this is a good segue then, maybe. So you all teach in theater programs. Do you incorporate other aspects like film, TV, corporate design, architectural design, or others? And I think, Narelle, as you sort of alluded to this, if you don't, will you begin doing it moving forward? One of the things that the pandemic has amplified is that there are many places outside theaters where designers can work. Claudia, why don't we stick with you? What do you think is going to happen in your program?
We already, I would say for the last 10 years, we have allowed within the curriculum for our students to have a little bit of flexibility so that they can go take an architectural course, or they can go off into curating into a museum, or they can go over into game design. So though we incorporate some of it into the theatrical design classes, they have the opportunity to go take a deep dive. We have a program called Creative Computation, so they can learn code and get involved in that way. So our program allows already for those opportunities. We wait for the student to lead us down those paths. And then we encourage and help them identify internships and short-term job opportunities like over spring break, over Christmas break, summer internships, so that they can take a deep dive into those.
Into other aspects. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Yeah. Victor, how about you? Does that happen?
Yes, we are actually going full steam ahead to change our design for the undergraduate to entertainment design. I think this pandemic has pushed us in that direction, and we're coming out of the pandemic. We're going whole hog into it. We're trying to incorporate all aspects of, like I said, media design, but also design. I think Claudia mentioned, in the gaming world, in everything, even amusement park design. I think we need to train undergraduate to be able to succeed in any area they want to go into, and not just live theater.
I mean, if you look at the Pixar movies, there's a lighting designer and a set designer and a costume designer credited, and that's animation. Yep. Narelle, you touched on this already, but
yeah. Well, like Victor, we have students that are working in film and television. We have students who go into game design, who have gone into doing different types of installation and media and video design. So we really have a lot of options for the students when they leave, and part of that is our connection to alumni in the industry. That we have some fantastic alumni in New York and in LA, and they welcome young professionals with open arms. So we've been very lucky with that. Also, during this last year, we have a great relationship with Pittsburgh Opera, and so the students were in the scenery area and the media area were able to work with the opera companies, and we did 4 operas actually as part of our production cycle in the spring, and they were mostly with very few audience, some without. But it gave the students a chance to actually design something, work with a professional director, and then have it built and see it standing up. So that connection has been really wonderful.
Amazing. And Stephen, how about anything outside theater?
We've always practiced, going deep rather than wide, and it has seemed to provide a good foundation for people to, costume and set designers especially, to find really important, great careers in film and television. But COVID has maybe cracked things a little bit, and we had Alan Edelman come this year, and that got the lighting designers very excited. So we may be opening up a little bit.
Sure. I mean, there aren't many people who do what Alan does, and I'm sure the man has to retire at some point, maybe not anytime soon, but I mean, he can't split himself. So there's a great opportunity right there.
Yeah.
Stephen, I'm going to stick with you. How much do you teach about what it takes to be a professional designer and what it means to be a freelance artist who, in essence, is running their own small business?
Right. Not enough for the students. They want more. It's
right.
Just so hard to teach everything. There's no time to teach it all. So far that's been mostly seminars and special classes. It's not a class in the regular curriculum.
Okay.
But we do pay attention to it, and maybe that'll change. I'm not sure. Yeah.
And Narelle, how about you?
Well, sorry, the question was, I just lost you for a sec with my...
Oh, no worries. I'm sorry. Do you teach about what it takes to be a professional designer? And
professional.
What it means to be like a freelancer and having to run their own business.
Yeah. We actually have a course that's called Professional Preparation, and the students take that, outside of the regular curriculum. But they learn how to, think about self-branding and resumes and portfolios and cover letters, and of course the thank you letter, which is the coveted thank you letter that people forget to write. So those are the things that we do with the students outside.
Someone should teach like taxes for artists.
Yeah, it's funny.
We actually do that. We have someone who comes in and doesn't. I mean, it's not a deep dive into taxes, but it's just kind of, this is what a domicile is, and this is what, like what are the terms, and what do the forms look like?
It took me far too long to figure out that I was a small business owner. As a freelance designer, there's so much more. I'm not just like making pretty things on stages. Like I actually own a business. But there are some people who are very good. I brought up Mike Baldessari before. He's been on the show. If you talk to him about how about design education, I think he feels like a third of it should be business oriented. So,
I think it's good for young designers to go and work with as an assistant to a more seasoned designer, because then you can start to, I certainly found that as a young designer, you can start to understand how the business works and how to bill expenses and just things like everyday things, and how to remember to keep all your receipts, those sorts of things that's so important as a young.
And turn them in. Turn
them in.
Victor, how about you? Do you guys teach business?
We don't have an official class teaching it, but we have a series of weekly 1-hour classes that we had our students sign in on. And we do train things like bring in a tax person to talk about freelance tax benefits that you should be aware of, and how to claim them, that kind of thing. We also bring in recent alums who brings in and talk about how they handle themselves in New York or LA or Chicago. So we do have that. We stopped doing it because of the pandemic. Hopefully, when we get back to our regular classes, that we resume it. So I know they were very helpful to our students.
That's great. It's always nice. Claudia, what do you do?
Yes, we have a business aspects class. It's a required course in the curriculum. They're introduced, we talk about the business, we talk about unions and union membership. We talk about taxes, we talk about insurance, we talk about retirement, saving for retirement. And then we also talk about freelancing. This year, I had a student for the first time take a class in the entrepreneurship program in the arts management area. So we're going to probably encourage our students to take that as an elective if they're interested, to sort of suss out the difference between freelancing and entrepreneurship. So it is a required course in our curriculum.
Amazing. That all sounds pretty great. Lucky students to be with you, fine professors.
Well, next is the super fun rapid fire.
Jeff's Roundtable Rapid Fire.
And Claudia, you are up first.
I like how it's become super fun. Claudia, favorite film or TV show from design point of view?
The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Oh, Stephen.
That's my classmate Donna Zakowska, who goes close.
Do you have one, Stephen?
Oh, Orson Welles. Anything by Orson Welles.
Yeah, sure. Victor.
Well, it's a bad movie, but it was Paul Newman's debut as an actor, called The Silver Chalice. The design was outstanding. This is abstract design like you wouldn't believe in a movie.
Okay. Cool. Now I'm going to check it out. I've never even heard of it. It's terrible. Narelle.
I grew up on Fellini films. All of them. Love them all.
Yeah, absolutely. Narelle, favorite thing to do when you are not working?
Oh gosh, let's see, painting and drawing. Is that included in working?
I think it might be, but not unless if you're doing it as a hobby, then I guess it's not.
I do it because I love it.
Yeah, that's great.
Between
Steven.
cooking.
Victor is what I meant to say. Victor.
I'm known for food.
Amazing.
I have a weekly Chinatown dinner back when I was living in New York. I like to try different cuisines with friends, family.
Cool.
So
Awesome.
it's a very Chinese thing to do.
Sounds great to me. Stephen.
Sailing or anything on the water, although it's not that frequent, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah. Claudia.
I'm reading and studying theology, so that's
Yeah.
what I'm loving it.
That's great. Amazing. Claudia, best advice you were given by anyone?
Did you say best advice?
Yes, best advice.
Be yourself. Know who you are and be yourself.
Stephen.
Take it easy, breathe.
That is great advice. Victor.
Best advice I was ever given was that anybody can be good in what we do. The thing we need to do is anticipate problems and solve them before anybody realized they were problems.
Yeah.
So it's a
Excellent.
great advice.
Excellent advice. Narelle.
Travel, study the world.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Narelle, something you know now that you wish you knew at the start of your career.
Oh gosh. Goodness gracious. I think that I know now that you have to enjoy what you're doing. And that's a very, very large answer, but I think that, the worry and the stress that you put yourself through as a young designer, you've just got to really enjoy it. So that would be that's my grown-up self saying, to the young self saying, just enjoy it.
It's a great answer. There's no law. We don't judge size. So it's a Victor.
I would say to balance more family time with work. I think we in theater work way too much.
Yeah.
And we just don't balance our lives. It took me until I have a family to realize that.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephen.
That wisdom can come from unexpected sources.
Great. Amazing. Claudia, also great advice.
It's a journey. It's not a destination. There's going to change all the time. So just enjoy and be a part of the change and live into it. Step in and step up.
Yep. Claudia, something you've learned from your students, past or present?
I would say flexibility. I've learned flexibility because they know things I don't know. They bring up questions I've never heard before. So flexibility is what I've learned, to be flexible.
Yeah. Stephen.
I've learned that there are really many different ways of seeing the world. When I started teaching, I thought, this is how you do it. And I've gradually learned that there are other ways.
Yeah. Victor.
I think the best thing I ever learned from my students is that there are just so many different ways you could see the world, and every student has a different perspective. And I learned that because as a lighting designer, for years, we don't have another lighting person. We just did things on our own.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden I have students and they have different perspective on it.
Narelle.
I think teaching teaches you to be a better teacher and a better designer. I think students are surprised when you tell them that, but honestly, being in front of a group of students and having to actually unpack your knowledge and listening to the students and seeing things that perhaps somebody else earlier said that you don't expect, it just makes you into a better person, a better teacher.
Yeah, perspective. I think that's what Victor was saying similarly. It's nice to have that perspective. as a singular designer, you don't really get it unless you're in a room with other designers, and I guess that forces you to do that. This is turning into non-rapid fire. My fault. Narelle, hardest part of your job?
Hardest part, keeping track of everything. Obviously I'm teaching, but I'm also, part of our work, we have to practice too. So there's a lot to juggle. So I think getting good at juggling, perhaps.
Yeah. Victor?
I would say the hardest part of teaching is to just get the students to realize the confidence to design. I think that's the hardest thing. It just takes me such a long time to say, hey, you can design, trust it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for us sometimes too. Stephen?
So most of our classes are critique based. So we look at the work in class and we get to discuss it. But every so often I have to take a light plot home and try to make comments on it. That is torture, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Claudia?
I think that for me, the hardest part about teaching is when I've tried perhaps multiple ways to help a student, communicate with a student, help them find what the next steps are, and the sense of failure, the sense of, the sadness and failure, feelings of failure when you can't quite help them make those next steps. That's hard. It's hard to take. And you have to abandon it to the universe a little bit, or sometimes then they find the right step. So it's part of the journey, but that is hard for me to not be able to help them when they need help.
So then something you love about what you do. Enough of the hard stuff. What do you love about it?
What I love about what I do is that it is extraordinarily flexible, actually. I can be designing in 1 minute and then sewing in another minute and then, talking to a student. And I mean, it's just every day is different. And that's what I love the most. And every show is different, right? We get to do research in a whole new area, a whole new topic. So that's what I love, is the flexibility that it's allowed me to have in my life, in my creative life.
Yeah. Stephen?
I mean, there's a lot I love about it, but just one random thing is wherever I go in the world, I'm likely to run into somebody I know.
Oh, yeah, that is great. Victor, how about you? One random thing. I like that also.
I just love designing, and I just thrive in designing. And I think when I stop loving it, then I'll stop doing it. But I have been living my life doing it, so.
Yeah, you're here. Narelle, something you love about what you do.
Yeah, I love seeing the students being successful, having breakthrough moments, seeing them when they start, the terrified, young student, and how they've progressed through the program. And then, of course, seeing them succeed and win awards and do all sorts of stuff in the industry. So, I love that. I love seeing them kind of develop and thrive.
Well, since you mentioned travel before, let's stay here. Where's the first place you want to travel once all the restrictions are lifted and everyone feels safe? Where do you want to visit? Where do you want to go?
I think to go and see family. I miss my family. I've got some, we're all over the world, but I have some in Australia, some in the UK. I think I would book a ticket to, both of those places first. And then the third place, I would probably love to go to, a place I've never been, like, perhaps, part of China or, some area of Asia.
Victor?
Well, anywhere but home in Kansas City. I just miss traveling. I think lighting designers are theater designers are gypsies. We are all over the world, and I miss that. I just miss being somewhere else and designing.
Here. Stephen?
For some reason, my wife and I have decided that Copenhagen is next.
Oh, I love it. I love that you know. That's great. Do you know when, or is it just next? Whenever
as
that
soon
is.
as possible.
Amazing. Claudia?
I've already got plans. This summer, I'm going on a road trip to see family. But when I can really travel, I'm going back to Spain to walk the Santiago, Compostela. I've done it once before, and I'll do it again. So
Cool.
I'm going to do another pilgrimage. So
That's amazing. Amazing. I want to travel with all of you. You're all going to such cool places. We're almost done. We're actually out of time, but I'm going to hit on two quick things before we go. Design Week. So how are you preparing your students for Design Week? Is it different than you would prepare them otherwise? Narelle, let's start with you. What's the difference this year as compared to last year?
Well, last year we were on the screen, but this year we're on the screen again. But we have we hired someone to help us program the week at Carnegie Mellon. So we have all sorts of exciting events, including meeting with alumni, all remotely, obviously, doing different meetings with professionals, and I'm really excited about the mixes that we have with all the different schools coming up.
Yeah, and how do people find out about those mixers? Are they on the Carnegie website or the Design Week?
Yeah, they're on the Design Week schedule, but we also have them on our own timetable for our students, so they know what they can do and when it's available.
Yeah, I realize I asked that question poorly. When I say last year, what I really mean is before COVID. How is it different? So, but Stephen, how about for you and Yale? How are you preparing everyone?
It's a little bit different for us because we don't have anybody graduating this year, so these are our graduates from last year, and some of them are actually not available because fortunately or unfortunately they're all over the world. So they were prepared, they were ready for the showcase last year. So we did our preparation a year ago.
Yeah, got it. Claudia.
We've spent the semester, we always do every semester, but in this case, the skills, instead of being in-person skills, we've been teaching Zoom skills and how to, slide easily in and out of Zoom conversations and how to guide people through your portfolio online, or how to have coffee online with people. How do you network and meet people, and how do you open conversations? It's kind of people skills, but on Zoom.
Yeah, it's hard. Victor, how about you and your?
Well, we try to prepare them in the last semester, and last year I didn't have any students graduating, but this year I have 3, and I prepare them by doing mock interviews with them, getting them to talk to some of our alums ahead of time.
Cool, that's great. I'm sure that is very helpful.
Well, before we get to the final question of the night, I just want to share some of these that were sent to me. Victor, tell me about this one.
I just became master electrician at the New York Shakespeare Festival, and this was at the Delacorte after, I think, a tech rehearsal because there's a cup of beer in my hand.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. Aside from being busy reinventing education, what has COVID life been for you, Victor? Anything that you've done that you've ignored, or any new hobbies that you've picked up, or more cooking?
I think I did more cooking at home than anything else this past year. I think I was able to order food, but we have to eat, so I cooked most of my meals.
Awesome. Well, speaking of, I don't know if you're cooking here, but Claudia, tell us about this one.
This is my loft in Brooklyn. And my husband and I own the loft in Brooklyn, and you can see the fanny bag, so that dates the picture.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm doing dishes, which I've certainly done a lot of dishes. Oh, that's another picture in the loft.
Cool.
Great photo.
Yeah.
So is there any hobbies that you picked up during this COVID?
Well, my husband was the cook.
Okay.
And so I started cooking and baking, and I baked a food cake and a couple of other things. And so I think that's a modern miracle. But I've also taken up a little bit of knitting.
Awesome. That's great. And Narelle, I do have a photo from you. Tell us about this.
Exactly.
I'm sure everybody knows this character that I'm leaning on here. This is Chris Atlant and I when we were doing a show. I think this must be The background looks like we're in New York, so I'm going to say this must be when we were doing something down at Classic Stage Company many moons ago. He's a very dear friend of mine, and we've done plenty of work together. So
Awesome.
that was a good shot.
And how about you? Any new hobbies aside from painting that you picked up?
Aside from that's all I've picked up. That's it. Well, I've been doing, actually, this is so fun. I've been doing online art classes. But of course, they've been, in London, the Royal Drawing School. So we're talking London starting at, 5 a.m., Eastern time. So that's been challenging, but I've enjoyed doing this. And I've been taking kind of a very, various like drawing and painting classes, because since my and our collective freelance careers were on hold, I needed something to do, as a creative outlet. And actually, I found that I've really enjoyed it, and I'm trying to figure out how to keep it going.
Are the paintings behind you your own work?
Yeah, some of them are.
Okay.
I was hoping they'd be distant enough that they were sort of a bit blurry, but yeah, no, they are.
Awesome. And Stephen, sorry I don't have a photo from you, but you can tell me what you've been doing during the lockdown.
I had a pretty good pandemic project. I finally, after many, many years, made a woodworking shop in the basement, and it's really great.
Awesome!
So cool. That's great.
Jeff, yeah, are you still chopping wood? I remember that's what you were doing at the beginning.
That's how it began. I bought a maul and a chainsaw. No, actually, that was short-lived. Okay. I should get back to it though. All right, on our way out, there's a question that Paul Kilsdonk, one of our favorite guests and watchers, asked, but I'm going to combine this with our last question, and that is we'll do this in rapid-fire form so that everyone can go have their dinner. What advice do you have for young people who want to do what you do? Victor, let's start with you.
Advice? The question here?
Well, a combo. What advice do you have for people who want to do what you do, and what do you say to people who have lost their, who are sitting around waiting to work?
For those people who lost their job during the pandemic year, I would say just keep plugging away. Especially, there's so many virtual productions that have come up in the last 6 months, and I know that many of my alums has done that. They started working. They get hired because they have the technical expertise. Even though it's a whole different area, it's still an expertise they could use. For young designers starting out in the business right now, if you love doing this, just keep doing it, because that's the only way of, and don't stop working at it. A lot of people get discouraged because you know about theater, right? Too many people say no to you while you're trying to start out. Don't be discouraged by the no's.
Great advice. Narelle.
Gosh, that is great advice. I would also say don't be discouraged by the no's. There is, I think that, and this is something we talk to our students about. There are many. Once upon a time, we used to think that there was just kind of, you chose your path and went on that path and that was it. And you just, worked sort of single-mindedly towards doing, the one thing. But I think that nowadays it's really important for all of us to think about, being dot connectors is what we call it. So you're thinking about, making connections between different types of, your different skills and your different creative outlets and the things that you love, and putting them together perhaps and designing your own version of a career. So I would say, think outside of the box.
Also great advice. Stephen.
Yes, to Paul's question, hi Paul, I think things are going to come back. Just a couple more months, this is coming back, and things will be better. I really believe it. And as for advice, really see as much theater as possible. I don't think young designers always do that, and that's how you'll find out who you are and your own voice, by seeing as much theater as you can see.
also more great advice, and also see things. And if you enjoyed it, and you're young, write a note to the designer or the director or the choreographer, and everyone does like to hear that you like their work. So lie and tell them you like their work, and then maybe they'll hire you. Claudia, how about you?
To the young students, the students that I had that were third-year graduate students this year, I said to them, when people ask you in a few years, what did you do during COVID? What are you going to say? Because everybody's going to say we didn't do any production. So what are you going to say? What did you learn that was different? What did you work on? So whether it's your drawing or your painting, or whether it's practicing your theoretical skills, whether it's looking into different side hustles, just keep working towards your art, but keeping different doors open and being open to these other opportunities, because you never know where those are going to lead you. A lot of people say, oh, the theater is dead. We've heard that a million times in our career. And the theater is never dead. The theater always comes back, and it will come back. There is no question. And so just keep going and watch for the art, because it's there. You'll find it.
4 pieces of amazing advice. Thank you all so much. Is there anything you'd like to clarify, retract, or add before we say goodbye? Okay.
Well, I'm just going to end it. Michael commented, this week's episode spotlights, no pun intended, an area of the industry that isn't often at everyone's attention. A really great episode. Thank you for continuing these roundtable video chats. Always informative.
Thank you.
So to the panel, Narelle, Victor, Stephen, and Claudia, thank you so much. It was another great discussion. We've done this for a year, and I just learned so much every single episode. So thank you so much. To the people watching, and if you want to, we're going to have a special roundtable, Wednesday roundtable, to open up the 4-Wall Virtual Vendor Showcase. I just commented the link to register. It's free. We created a custom lobby. There's going to be a lot of cool, fun things to see. And yeah, we look forward to seeing everybody else very soon. Thank you again, and we will see you next Sunday. We're off for Memorial Day weekend, so catch us.
I think we're gonna show the virtual vendor show on.
That's right.
We'll show them eventually. Anyway.
All righty. Well, thank you, everybody, and we will see you soon. Bye, everyone.